Welcome to Omni Love TV, where we explore the all-encompassing love within us and all around us. I'm your host, Lauren Peters.
Hello, I'm Lauren Peters, and welcome to another very special edition of Omni Love TV Expert Interviews. Today, you're going to learn how to be more of a self-leader in your relationships so that you can stop being fucking frustrated with your significant other.
It took you 7 seconds to drop an F-bomb. That's got to be a new record.
I'm excited to introduce my friend, Jason Goldberg, international speaker and coach, creator of Meometry.com, and co-host of the awesome, the Not So Serious Life show. He recently spoke at Awesomeness Fest in Costa Rica, which is where we met, and his topic was around self-leadership, and we'll talk more about that in today's interview. So thank you for being on the interview today.
I am so excited to be here. You're a rock star. I love your smile, and I love that you can be so cute when you drop F-bombs. And why do girls always scratch their hair like that? What is that? What is this one thing? Pat your weave. Yeah, girl, pat your weave. Oh, sorry, we're going off on a tangent now. Okay. It's so great to see you. Thank you for having me on the show. Omni Love is awesome. You're fantastic, and I love the work you're doing, and I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here, too. I've been wanting to interview you for the longest time, and I recently made a Facebook post which was around the divine feminine man, and we're going to get more into that now, but I love how relevant that is for sort of what we're creating right now in this interview. I have one very simple question to start off with.
Yeah.
What is self-leadership?
What is self-leadership? How am I supposed to know? Oh, that's my thing. Never mind. Okay, that's what I talk about. I should know what this is. Okay. So self-leadership is a lot of things. It's an approach to life. It's an approach to the way you see the world. It's an approach to the way you show up in the world. It's an approach to the way you do things in the world. It's really a sense of being and a sense of doing. So it's not is sometimes easier to explain. It's not a permanent personality. You are not a self-leader. Like, you don't do some kind of magic process and then you're a self-leader for life. Self-leadership is a moment-by-moment process. And so every time that you're in any given moment, you have a choice. In my mind and in my own experience, I'm an expert in one thing, Lauren, and it's my life and my experience, is that I have a choice to either be a prisoner of my circumstance or a leader of myself in any given moment. And whether I decide to have productive interpretations and take ownership of my spirit and my energy, or be at the mercy and the liberty of circumstance and people and places and situations and blame and all these things and abdicate personal responsibility, that is a moment by moment choice. And in my life, the more I choose to be a self-leader, the more effective my life is. The less I choose it, the less effective my life is. So that's just kind of the way it works for me. Does that make sense?
Totally. I love how this kind of like ties into, I posted something on Facebook yesterday saying, I don't know if you saw this, I asked, in your opinion, what is the opposite of freedom?
I did see that. Yeah. And I almost posted a response. You know what my first thought was?
What?
And I didn't post it because you had a lot of great responses, and I knew that if I responded, it would have been from ego, and it wouldn't necessarily have served the conversation. But now that we're talking, the first thing that came up for me was noise. The opposite of freedom is noise. Like, as soon as we get rid of the noise and all the extra crap and the extra like weight, like I talked about in Costa Rica, like this mental weight, physical weight, emotional weight, when we let the dust settle, or like in my mind, I'm picturing a snow globe that's been shaken up. When we let all that snow just settle without thinking that we have to take every little piece of snow and put it on the ground, like, that's freedom. It's just a lack of noise is kind of what came up for me. I don't know if that makes sense.
It totally does. It's something that you said a little earlier. You said a prisoner of my experience. Is that what you said?
Yeah, of circumstance, of your experience. Yeah, absolutely.
And I was going to say, like, that sounds very appropriate for being the opposite of freedom.
Yeah.
Like, other people were saying imprisonment or cage, but it almost sounded like, maybe this is how I interpret it, it almost sounded like they were saying from someone else's standpoint. So, like, being a prisoner of someone else, and you're essentially only ever a prisoner of yourself.
That's right.
Unless you're literally in jail. But that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah. And even still, it's funny because you say that. Even still, one of my best friends is a guy named Sean Stevenson. He's a speaker, and he actually did a talk, a TEDx inside of a jail. And he actually brought up, and I'm putting this story in my book because I thought it was so profound, is that he knows people who are not in prison who are more prisoners in their life than the people who are inside the jail cells. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, the prison of our own mind is way more powerful than even the prison cell bars that would keep us confined in a box.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, so you've got this self-imprisonment concept, and then you just said noise, which I love both of them. And I really did love everybody else's responses too. So cool.
They're great ones, yeah.
I want to know, because I'm around a lot of wonderful life coaches, and some say self-leadership coach, some say self-love coach. Do you have an opinion? What is the difference between self-love and self-leadership?
Well, if you know any other self-leadership coaches, give me their name because I'm going to kill them.
I have that trademarked.
Trademarked. Self-leadership and self-love. I love that. I've been playing a lot with self-love too, because, growing up, I've had a lot of issues with self-love. I've had body shame issues my entire life. I grew up very heavy. I was 250 pounds when I was 15 years old. And, at 15 is when kids are really kind and sweet and compassionate and love you for who you are. And then I was big my entire life. I got up to 332 pounds when I was, 28, 29 years old, which I shared in Costa Rica. And so I've always had body shame issues. So self-love was a big part of that. Not having self-love made me feel even worse about my physical appearance. And it's still something that I play with now. It's less about my physical appearance and more about beating myself up or shaming myself if I'm not as far along as I think I should be, or if I take some time off on a Sunday because I could be productive and I'm not being productive. So the self-love part there is kind of more about being gentle on yourself and loving yourself and knowing that you're doing the best you can. Whereas self-leadership is basically saying, given the circumstance of what's going on in my world, right? Self-leadership is not about delusional thinking or rainbows and butterflies or the power of positive affirmations. It's not about, those things aren't bad, but it's not about those things. What self-leadership is about is saying, given the facts of this situation, what would I like to create? What would be an ideal situation for me to have? And how can I take a role in creating that? So I think, and I've never had this conversation before, I think that self-love and self-leadership are not necessarily prerequisites for each other, but I think they strengthen each other. I think if you're gentle with yourself and you don't put so much pressure on yourself to be something other than you are, then you're at a more peaceful, free place where you can then make decisions as a self-leader, make decisions about what you want to create and who you want to be in the world with less stress and tension and weight and heaviness on you. Does that make sense?
It totally does. And I just drew a picture.
Nice. I love those cookies. Oh, wait, hold on. This is not okay, sorry.
It's a button.
It's a button. I love that.
The yin and the yang, right?
Yeah.
So just what you said, self-love sounds very feminine and self-leadership sounds very masculine.
I've never thought of that. That's brilliant. I love that. I agree.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. That actually changes the way I can talk about some things in the future. So thank you.
You're welcome. So I guess I'll go ahead and go now.
Why? Sure, if you want. Why is self-leadership so freaking hard?
Okay, so if I get into coach mode, I would challenge that thinking.
Yes,
and ask,
totally.
I would. Why do you feel like? Yeah, why do you feel like self-leadership is hard? I would invite you to challenge that story.
Oh, the coach says to the coach.
It's going to be questions back and forth. Nobody's going to actually take a stance on anything.
Well, I think right now consistency is a little difficult for me. And, at the end of 2016, I was super consistent. Going into 2016, being in planning mode, just trying to, there's a lot of noise going on right now. I'm just trying to sift through it. Yeah, and sure. So, self-leadership, I feel for me personally has been a little more difficult than normal. Why do I find it difficult? Because I have a lot of noise.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and that's the beauty. And this is why I like to say, there's one question that I inevitably get, and I probably won't get it eventually because I've been saying this on a lot of podcasts, so people are going to hear this and say, okay, I'm not going to ask him that question anymore. But there's one question I get at the end of almost every single one of my live talks, which that's really all I speak about is self-leadership in different aspects, right? Sales or relationships or leadership or whatever. But the one question I always get is, how can I be a self-leader 100% of the time? And it's a question I can't answer because I can't do it myself.
Okay.
It's not something to do 100% of the time. In fact, a prisoner is the person who says, well, if I can't be a self-leader 100% of the time, then fuck it. I'm just not going to be a self-leader at all. That's a very prisoner thing to do. Whereas a self-leader says, I wasn't a self-leader in that last moment. I was a total victim. I was a total prisoner. But That moment's gone now. This is the moment I have. I don't need to be consistent with self-leadership. I just need to choose self-leadership in this moment. And then in the next moment, I'll make another decision whether I choose to be a self-leader or not. But it can be so much lighter than that. Like we walk around with so much heaviness around commitment, and the word commitment has become like commandment. Like it's not like a thing that you like love doing. It's a thing that you have to do. It's forceful, it's heavy, it's very masculine. But I think at the end of the day, the question is, does it serve me? So if you were to sit there and say, and by you, I mean me or you or anybody watching, if you're able to say in this moment, oh man, I should have been more of a self-leader, like that shit, man, I missed so many opportunities. The only question to ask is, does that line of thinking serve you in being a self-leader in this moment? And if it doesn't,
nope.
Peace out, bro. That's scientific.
Have you said commitment versus commandment before? Because that was super good.
I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, and I agree. You know, like even sometimes when I go, are you committed? Are you 100% committed? And it's like, I want to be, but that doesn't feel good, you know?
Yeah. You know what word I like better than commitment?
What?
Willing.
Willing. Are you willing?
Yeah.
Are you ready and willing?
Yeah. And I don't even care about ready. I don't
Okay.
care if you're ready. Because I'm not ready for shit. I'm never ready for anything. But I'm willing. I'm willing to test. I'm willing to experiment. I'm willing to fail. I'm willing to try again. I'm just willing. And to me, that's that. Maybe that's because, and we kind of talked about this before we started recording, but I kind of lead with more feminine energy naturally. And so maybe that's why I like the gentler approach. Like I don't like drill sergeants. I've never had a coach myself that was a drill sergeant because I don't respond to that. I respond to love and compassion and celebration and pushing, right? But pushing from a place of love, not pushing from a place of like, you got to do this now, push hard, make shit happen, roar, Gary V. I love Gary V. I'm just saying, that kind of thing.
Okay. So I want to shift into a little bit now that we're talking more about like feminine, masculine stuff.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned earlier, I wrote a little post a couple weeks ago. It got a lot of attention. It was something along the lines of like writing a letter to the divine feminine man. And there was a lot of lean in, like, oh, what is the divine feminine man? Because I'm a man, and that sounds kind of good to me. And I was essentially writing about mine, and I will even say about 5 women around me that I really cared about were going through the same thing at the same time in their relationships. And what was happening was we were in such amazing relationships that was making our old childhood crap kind of come up. And that triggering our fear of this man can't handle this. So either I'm going to run away or I'm going to prove that he can't handle it. I'm going to prove to him that he can't handle it by being very difficult about it.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was these men were like, sorry, go ahead and do whatever the hell you want to do. I'm not going anywhere. And this is why I'm not going anywhere. And this is what I'm dealing with on my end. And we are in a relationship. This is a beautiful, I guess, like growing agreement that we have. I'm not going anywhere. And then the women, including me, were like, okay. So just that realization alone and having men counterparts that were going to hold this feminine space for us to explore what this crap was about was very rare to us. And, we're noticing a lot more of the divine feminine type of concepts and energy kind of going around and being less commanding and being more nurturing and holding a lot of space for whatever the hell is going to come up for either the man or the woman. So, a lot of people were like, wow, this is really helpful. This is exactly what I'm going through. And then I reached out to you at that same time and you're like, hey, this is I could talk about this.
Yeah.
And especially along the lines of self-leadership. So what do you have to say about that post? And how might this be showing up or have showed up in your relationships?
Yeah, I think I loved it for a lot of reasons, but I loved it because I think it feels very foreign to a lot of men to be okay really tapping into their feminine energy. And it's just something, society, gender roles, like it's just not okay. Like you got to be a man's man. And so I guess I'm lucky in that respect because I was raised by a single mother, a single Jewish mother, so she can hear everything we're saying right now. And I was raised in a salon environment too. So I was around nothing but, gay men and straight women and some gay women, but mainly gay men and straight women. And so I was around feminine energy all the time. And so that became like a very natural thing for me. So being empathetic, watching my mom play like armchair therapist to all of her clients my entire life, just seeing, the levels of empathy and connection. And so that was very normal to me. And that really, I think, caused me a lot of challenge growing up because we weren't in this spot we're in now over the last, 25, 30 years or whatever. So being a kid who was always more compassionate and loving and empathetic didn't really mix well with like the jock, super masculine people. So I love now that a light's being shined on that and women are saying, wow, we love that our men can tap into their feminine energy because it supports us. It doesn't, feminine energy in a man, that huge misconception to me, feminine energy in a man does not mean he's weak. It doesn't mean he, cries at every Sarah McLachlan commercial, although sometimes I cry at Sarah McLachlan commercials because that bitch comes on TV and just ruins your day. But anyways, it's not about that. It's about, like you said, it's about being able to relate to our partners on that level, right? To really, like you said, hold the space and connect to where they are. Now, where that's a little interesting in my relationship, and you got to meet my wife Alicia at A-Fest as well, and she's amazing. Just we've been together for 10 years now. And married for over 8. And she, funny enough, has always led with more masculine energy. So it was very interesting, this dynamic. And so it's actually been funny because it's kind of been a thing where we've been working more towards the middle. And so because I lead more with feminine energy, it has been easier for us to strengthen our relationship when she has gone through a lot of crap that she's gone through that's come up, like you said, the childhood stuff coming up and, having to go to therapy and all these things, which she's been so gracious to let me know that I can, share this wherever I'm sharing it. So it's not confidential, that she's okay with it. And just having all that stuff come up and her also, I think, thinking like, even when she leads with the masculine energy, well, you're not gonna be able to handle this because it's my stuff and it's so much, and I hope I'm not being a burden on you, and just all this stuff that I'm sure you and your female friends were thinking like, well, this has just got to be a burden. He's gonna leave at any minute because who wants to deal with this shit?
Yes.
But when a man can really show up with that level of empathy, which really I think is all it comes down to, feminine energy, whatever, it's about empathy. It's about connecting with another human being. When we can show up like that as men, we're going to be powerful. We're going to be strong in that space. We're not these weak, frail, falling apart little girls. We're men who are able to see the power in relating to our woman's feminine energy and her issues and her challenges and just being there for her in any way that we can. I know that was kind of a rant. I hope there was something of value.
No, it was a really good rant. Very concise.
Good.
Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head. Like, females not fully feeling supported, kind of feeling like a burden for just having a voice, for being human beings. And we're all learning how to just like not give a shit about that and really just choose love at all times, even when we're going through a bunch of crap. And, as a feminine, I'm a very feminine woman. Mm-hmm. And so what's my thought here?
Well, it's funny you say that. I see masculine energy in you too, though.
Yeah.
So you're very feminine.
I'm learning how to like yin the yang and whatever you want to call it. And so in my relationship, it's not necessarily that my man becomes more feminine and then I become more masculine when I need that support. It's just that, like you just said, it's empathy. And when you have a big fat pool of empathy, there's no pushing, there's no forcing, there's no there's not a lot of ego. And I mean, hopefully there's no ego. I'm learning a lot about ego right now. But, you can be both feminine and a masculine woman in order to go through this and in order to be supported by the divine feminine man. And so were you always this empathic for your significant others? Or what was that process like for you to discovering what this dynamic was going to be?
Yeah, it's interesting. As I think about it, I think that as I was kind of finding how to navigate that myself, because just because you have that level of empathy doesn't mean you know how to wield it properly, right? Like just because you have a gun doesn't mean you know how to properly shoot the gun. So for me, I think what happened for me in a lot of my relationships earlier on was that my feminine energy came across as needy, right? That I was very needy, and that's not a female trait. That is maybe a feminine energy trait. I don't want you to leave me. I want to protect and safeguard your love at all costs. What can I do to make it absolutely certain that you will not leave me? And that was what I led with. And so that's been a challenge for me over the years, is to let go of some of that and to realize that is ego. Right? That there's no possible way I can know. And Alicia and I have talked about this before. Like, as much as we love each other, there is nothing either one of us can do to prevent the other one from leaving us. Right? There's nothing that we can do to make that happen. All we can do is love each other. And it's not about proving your love. I mean, you do that. It's in a perfect world, you wouldn't prove your love. You would just know or trust or believe or whatever. But we do. We do things. We all do things to like prove our love to each other. But to know that there's no end to that proving. It's not like, okay, if you prove your love for 2 more weeks, then I'll know for sure you're not leaving. It doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way. So we have a choice. We can constantly require that our significant other prove to us that they're not going anywhere, right? Or we can trust that whatever they've done, whatever they've been there with us through, however they show up, the fact that they're still there today, that's all that matters. That's all that matters.
Okay. So this neediness, how did you recognize that? And then how did you overcome that? Or is it something that is very small that continuously needs to be overcome?
Yeah, I think I think like self-leadership in general, it's a moment-by-moment decision. And that may just be that I'm not enlightened enough yet to say that I can get rid of it for good. But for me, the path is that it's still a moment-by-moment decision. And I think it's a practice. And I think it's also indicative of a bigger challenge, at least that I've always had, is historically being a people pleaser, right? People pleasing has been like in my DNA, and I don't mean that because I don't think there's anything permanent and pervasive about our personalities, but it's something I've practiced and made very easy in my life as being a people pleaser. So I think neediness and people pleasing go together. So the more that I can question the thoughts about why I need to try to get somebody to like me, why I need to manage somebody's perceptions of me, why I need to why I need to do impression management of all the people around me, right? Like I have to manage their impression of me. The more I can question, it's not even about like lying to myself, but the more I can question like, well, do I really need to get Lauren to like me right now? Or can I just share what's on my heart? And if it serves, it serves. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. If I can question those kind of thoughts as they come up, then the default response of people pleasing and being needy gets smaller and smaller and smaller over time. At least that's my belief. But it requires us to do that work. And so when I say the work and I say questioning, I also mean like, if you're familiar with Byron Katie, like the work. And that's if you've never seen Byron Katie and never looked at the work, go look at the work. It's 4 questions, and it's all about challenging these beliefs that we carry around, and that is the foundation to me of everything. Whatever you believe is the way that you have to act in the world. You have no choice. Once you believe something to be true, that is the way you act in the world. So it stands to reason, challenge those beliefs, and you'll challenge and change the way that you live your life.
Completely. I am in the middle of changing a lot of beliefs for myself right now. I guess that's an ongoing thing because we keep making new ones, whether we realize it or not.
Yeah.
So
it's what we do.
You said something like in the moment right now, I could ask myself if I can just share and either serve or not serve. And then there's the other side to that, which is, are you pleasing yourself first, right? Which is the self-love and self-leadership. So it's like a constant like cycle of just pretty much managing your self-leadership.
It is. And I think a big part, you mentioned the whole ego thing, and nobody's without ego, right? I mean, ego, when somebody says, I don't have an ego, they're lying. That's their ego talk. Like we all have egos. The question is, how loud is the ego in the conversation in our lives, right? The ego's there, but how much significance do we give it? Do we give it a megaphone, or do we tell it to talk into a bag and use its 6-inch voice like we're in a classroom? So the ego is going to be there. But I think a big part of self-leadership also, and it's something that I've learned over time especially from being coached, is that we put so much focus on us. Like I think it was a Beatles song, the I, me, mine. Like it's all about me. And it's like one big part of self-leadership is asking, instead of like, how do I make it about me, is how do I serve the other person? And that's in business relationships, that's in personal relationships with family and friends, and that sure as hell is in your relationship with your significant other. In this moment, I'm pissed off because Alicia didn't do the dishes when I did the laundry. I took the dog out. Like, I'm just saying, I got a lot of stuff on my plate too. I woke up at 5 a.m. and went to the gym. Why didn't you do the dishes? Does it serve me or her for me to take that approach? Does it serve me or her to have that interpretation of she did something wrong? I can't possibly know what caused her to not do the dishes, right? I can't possibly know. So where can I bring in the feminine energy of understanding and compassion and empathy and say, is there something I can do to help you? Mm-hmm. Do you have a lot on your plate right now? Is there something going on that you're not sharing with me that I can either help you work through, take off your plate entirely, or just listen to you talk about that will free up some energy and some time and some space for you to do the other things that you want to be able to do? That is a moment by moment practice. I am in no way a guru that just says immediately, the dishes weren't done, honey, what can I help you with? Like, it doesn't just happen like that.
It's a process of thought.
It's absolutely a process of thought. So I think the more we can practice that, though, the more it becomes a default response, and the more it really just strengthens our relationship.
Yeah, I had a moment like that when I went home for the holidays. It was around family. Mm-hmm. That's always difficult sometimes in the most growth of ways, if that makes any sense. And, someone got really, really pissed off at me for just like chilling, for just being myself, whatever. And instead of requesting what they needed, it was sort of like a blow up. And in that moment, I'm like, okay, I could lash back and say, calm the fuck down, It's not that big of a deal. I love it when people say that. Not really. It's not that big of a deal. Mm-hmm. And what I did was I chose to turn it around and say, look, obviously this person is not happy with something right now. Instead of saying, wow, you're a bitch, saying, how can I support you right now in whatever your experience is? Or how can I serve you?
Yeah.
And so that was a very difficult process for me. But I totally agree.
Was your like blood boiling, and were you like feeling the tension?
No, I actually, I'll be honest, I did lash out at first.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it took a couple hours for me to do this process. Yeah. And they came back home, and it was all right. We didn't really talk about it, but where I was coming from, even without saying, how can I support you? The energy of the connection completely changed. Like, I want to be really clear about that too. Like, just the energy in the room. Like, when your intention changes, when your ego quiets down, when your angry ego quiets down, because you can have not angry ego.
Sure.
When that quiets down, it just gives you so much open space to like choose love.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That's true. I mean, it's beautiful. The fact that it took you a few hours is so much better than the people who it would take a few days. And there's nothing wrong with people where it take a few days, but it just shows that you are making progress if it only took you a few hours. I mean, there are times in my life where it would probably be 3 months or 3 years before I'd be able to have that conversation. So 3 hours is not so bad. And the thing is too, is that, one of my favorite sayings is defense is the first act of war, right? Somebody saying something to you, that doesn't start conflict. You're defending whatever they said to you is when the war starts. Mm-hmm. So if I just yell at you right now and just go off and say that I hate you and I can't stand you and you're such a bitch and I can't believe you, and you just say to me, thank you for sharing that with me, there's no defense, and so there's no war. Defense is the first act of war, not offense. Everyone thinks the first person that says the first thing is the one who creates the war. It's the person who responds. They have the choice of whether the war is started or not.
Absolutely. If anyone wants to look up more about this, Google keyword authentic relating.
Cool. Yeah, I've done authentic relating.
Have you? What's your experience?
Fun stuff. It's interesting. I had how much do I want to say about this?
You don't have to say too much.
No. It is a wonderful experience. It is something I would highly suggest that everybody goes and does, if nothing else, to get out of your comfort zone and to practice really crazy things like eye gazing and just that was my least favorite thing. It never got fun for me. But there are let's just sit here for 5 minutes and not say anything at all. Actually, this isn't bad with you because I actually like you and I know you, so it doesn't feel. But and it wasn't weird. It's weird at first, but yeah, I would say go check out Authentic Relating. I think that's a great thing. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not doing the eye gazing, but just in the community here where I live, there's a lot of just authentic relating period, and a lot of people who have actually gone and done training for it.
Yeah.
And they teach you very simple things like when someone says something, instead of projecting what you want to get from them, which is essentially what happens most of the time when you're not in authentic relating, drop into where they are and really try to understand what their experience is, which is what we're kind of talking about. Like, how can I serve this person? How do I really be in this person's space? And instead of going in and like mentioning or just responding, it's always easier to just tell people where you are, or like say, yes, I heard what you just said, or like, thank you for sharing that. It's like letting them know that you heard them, number one.
Yeah.
And then number two, if you want to start talking about yourself, mention the emotions or like what's coming up for you before you go and mention something else. So like, I'm noticing that I'm feeling a little nervous about what you just said, and I want to share why.
Yeah. And owning that experience. Not
exactly.
not saying you made me feel this way, but saying I'm noticing within me that I'm a little nervous or a little whatever. Yeah, I love that.
100%. It's being more aware of your own experience. And then, so me and my boyfriend, we had some pretty terrible communication things last year. And what we both we realized that we were both doing certain things, but what I was doing specifically was I was telling him what his experience was.
Yeah.
I was saying, well, you don't need to be so angry at me right now because of this, or like, well, you're all pissed off all the time about this. And it's like, well, I didn't even ask him how he was feeling. And not only that, like, even if he was feeling that, like, I don't have the right to ever tell somebody what they're experiencing. I can only be accountable for what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. But that's such a huge thing like that. People listening may think that that's really simple. It's, some of the most profound things in the world are that simple. And one of the things I try to remember, and again, all the stuff I'm saying, this is not coming from a guru place. This is coming from a lifelong practice, continuing to experiment place, is that I never want to make anybody wrong for their feelings. Nobody ever got a feeling wrong. That's like going to the doctor and they put a thermometer in your mouth and they take it out and they say, well, you have a fever, but that's stupid. You shouldn't have a fever. Because I'm looking at you and you look fine. So this thermometer is stupid for saying that you have a fever. Like, nobody got anything wrong. The thermometer doesn't get it wrong. Right. And so if I can remember that, like, you know what, no matter what this person seems like they're feeling, and we can't possibly know, right? That's the other thing, is to really come from, and this is something, again, like that I have a lot of my clients practice, especially, is coming at every situation from an I don't know mind. Because we think we know all the time. Oh, well, that person's mad. And not only do I know they're mad, I know why they're mad, and they shouldn't be mad. If I can come from a place of I can't possibly know what they're truly feeling, and I can't possibly know what had them feel that way, that I can really be curious, and I can drop into being loving, and I can drop into not making them wrong, and I can just have an open conversation and see how I can support them.
Curiosity.
Yeah,
for sure.
Always. Curiosity over certainty all day.
That what you just said reminded me of something I also used to do, which is my boyfriend would share with me what was coming up for him, and I would instantly react. And whatever came out of my mouth told him that what he was feeling and sharing was wrong. Now, I know that both men and women do this, but just in my personal experience and having friends and family where there are a lot of divine feminine men, and they're very open about what they're feeling, and they want to be open about it because they see the value in sharing and growing from that. And then the women just reacting based off of whatever crap they've got going on, and pretty much making their man wrong for either sharing or for having an actual emotion. So I'm sorry.
But
sorry.
All you have to do is notice, right? And so by noticing that and making sure that it's something you're aware of going forward, like if you didn't notice it and the pattern just continued, then that's where the issues come in. But the fact that this is another beautiful part, again, going back to self-leadership, it's moment by moment. If you did this thing that you're talking about 10 seconds ago, it's an unemotional historical data point on the calendar. It doesn't matter, right? All that matters is what you do going forward. So beautiful awareness that you have, lovely that you have a desire to change that in the next moment where it's available to be changed. And to me, that's enough.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So how do people in relationships be more aware of their self-leadership? And how does this become like a daily practice? Because if you take someone who's just doesn't do it at all or has never heard of it, do you have like a step-by-step process that you take them through to get into leadership almost all the time?
So I mean, that's the beautiful thing, is that everybody has had glimpses of self-leadership. Right? If you really sit down and think about, there's some situation where you could have exploded, or you could have gone to the worst case scenario, or you could have gone doom and gloom, or you could have done all these things, and you didn't. You chose not to. No matter how small or how big of an instance that was, there is a track record, because again, it's not a personality thing. It's simply a choice. So you've done it at some point. So it's not about starting, from the beginning. It's about just doing it more often. So the kind of the process that I like to use, and I'm a stickler for this because I don't like processes. I don't like the three-step. I don't like the 3-step process to be more of a human. Like, what? What do you mean? Like, you're going to give me a process? Like, what am I, a fucking robot? And so it's a process, but it's really a process that eventually fades away and just becomes kind of a part of who you are and who you're being. I won't say who you are because that's permanent again. Who you can choose to be in any given moment. So I call it the ARC model, ARC, right? And the reason I call it that is because it kind of represents the arc of going from being a prisoner of circumstance to being a self-leader, kind of that path in any given moment, not as a permanent personality thing, but at any given moment, how you make that transition. So the A, as you can probably guess, because it's what we just talked about, is awareness. Right? It's all about awareness. It's recognizing in the moment, something's happening. My significant other said something and I'm feeling triggered, or I'm feeling like I want to lash out, or I'm feeling like I want to do something in return that may or may not be a good thing. It's just having the awareness, something's coming up for me right now. There's nothing to do with the awareness at that point, right? I don't want to make this complicated. It's simply noticing. And that's one of the interesting things about when you really start practicing self-leadership, is that there will be times where you'll be a self-leader in your prisonerness, which sounds really weird, but here's what I mean by that. This is it. This is what's this will blow your mind. Is when I have a moment where I act as a prisoner and I react instead of slowing down to respond, or my old patterning and conditioning comes up, I can own in that moment, okay, I just chose to be a prisoner.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it's self-leadership and being a prisoner. I don't say I was a prisoner, but it's not my fault because so-and-so happened and so-and-so happened. Like, no, even in that moment, I can be a self-leader. Like, there's so many opportunities to be a self-leader, even when you're being a prisoner. It's like, that's so easy. So when you have a moment where you feel like you're being a prisoner, own that, right? Be a self-leader in that moment and say, cool, I just chose to be a prisoner. Not my best moment, but it's what I chose, and I own that, okay? And even at that moment, you may say, you know what? And I'm going to stay a prisoner for a little while. That's my choice. I'm going to be a prisoner. But even then, you're still at least owning the fact that you're choosing to be a prisoner. So the A is just about awareness. Does that make sense?
It totally does. I think I do that on Sunday nights when I'm done working and I'm mad and I'm hungry. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to give myself 30 more minutes to bitch about this and blame someone else. And in 30 minutes, I'm going to be done because I'm better than that.
Yeah.
But for me, sometimes that's just processing emotion.
Sure.
And understanding that I don't need to attach a meaning to it.
Sure.
Just process it out, get it out, feel better, and then go on and start choosing.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of thing too, like if you've worked a lot, if you're working a long day and you've done like 7 days in a given week because something big is going on and you feel like the prisoner is the default kind of reaction in that moment. I like to say that there are times, especially when we're tired and fatigued, that our intuition is drunk. Right. And it's like, and it's like, no matter, this could be a person in your life. Intuition can be a person in your life that no matter when you go to them, they're always there to help and they're always there to give you good advice and guide you. And you show up one day at their house and you ask them a question and they are piss ass drunk. They are falling off the couch and you're not going to be like, no, still give me advice. I'm sure it'll be good. You're like, you know what? I'll come back later. Sleep it off. Have a greasy cheeseburger. I'll come back and ask you again tomorrow. But we think that like it's okay to ask ourselves, our intuition, our heart, all these things when we're just absolutely fatigued and burned out. And like that's just not the time to do it. So on a Sunday night when you feel that way and you maybe are bitching and moaning a little bit, just, again, be gentle, love yourself, and just rest, and know that that will pass as you're able to rest. So anyway, so that's the A part, the awareness. Okay. The second part, the R, is responsibility, right? Your ability to respond. And so it's not responsibility like blame, shame, obligation. It's simply put your ability to respond. And so in that moment, we have awareness. Okay, my significant other just said this. I'm feeling like there's some triggering going on in my body right now for whatever reason. I don't care where it's coming from, to be honest. But knowing now, the next step is the responsibility. Given the facts of this situation, given the fact that he or she just said that, and given the fact that I'm feeling triggered, what are some other more productive interpretations that I could create right now about what's going on? Right? Not lying to myself, not putting on the rose-colored glasses, but literally saying, okay, I get that my initial response is to interpret it this way. What could be any other more productive interpretation that would actually serve me? And this all happens through slowing down, right? And that's like, if there's one thing that underlies all of self-leadership and all of the ARC model, it's being able to slow down in the moment.
And breathe.
Yes, and just breathe and know that it's okay if you're taking time and there's some silence between you and your partner after they said something. You don't have to have a reaction or a response or a comeback right away. You're not trying to win anything. There's no like speed round and Bob Barker's going to give you a Kia or something. So really slowing down. So you have your awareness, you have your responsibility, and again, you're not doing anything yet. The first two steps, there's not any doing. It's just a question of being. It's, okay, can I be aware of what's going on? And now what are some of the interpretations that would serve me, right? Now, when you get to the end, to the C in ARC, that's your choice, right? So C is choice. So you've had your awareness, you see something's coming up inside you, you've slowed down enough to say, yes, I get that that's one interpretation. It could be the right interpretation. What other interpretation could be just as true, if not more true, and that would actually serve me, right? So what do I have the ability to create in this moment as a new interpretation? And then we move on to choice that says, listen, given these new realities that I've created, these new interpretations, what would I like to create? What would be the ideal situation here? What would I love to have happen? What would I love to have as a result of whatever's going on between me and my significant other? Do I want them to feel understood? Do I want them to understand me? Do I want this to end with us hugging and kissing and really understanding each other? Like whatever it is that I want to create in this moment, how can I take a role in choosing the interpretation that I've kind of figured out in the R step and bringing that into the reality of the situation? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's easy.
Super easy. And again, like I said, the goal is that I don't want you to like have to pull out your phone and say, okay, hold on a second. A is awareness. Okay. No, just shut up for a second. Okay. My partner is a dick. And that, so I'm getting that he's a dickhead. No, I'll be with you in a second. Okay. Let me go to the R. And like, you don't, it's not like a process like that. So this is like in the beginning, maybe it feels more like that. Like you need a step by step, and that's great. And that's fine. But eventually you'll get to a point that the A and the R kind of condense. They kind of collapse into each other, and you really quickly say, okay, I'm aware I'm feeling this, and I'm aware this is my interpretation, and there's probably another truth that's just as true. Okay, what do I want to create in this moment? And you go right to C. And it happens fairly quickly. It doesn't have to, but it happens fairly quickly. And then you see what happens. And then it's out of your hands. I mean, then because the self-leadership is not about controlling the circumstances and people around you. It's about controlling the one thing you have control over, your thoughts and your stories and how you show up and how you approach the situation. So once you've gone through that, you have approached the situation in the best way possible for you, the most effective way possible for you.
Absolutely. And for the C specifically, in my experience, there's almost two routes for the C. There's the route 1, which is how am I going to treat this specific situation?
Yeah.
What am I going to choose? And then route 2, which is what am I going to do about that trigger? Like, do I need to go get therapy so that this doesn't keep coming up? That's been a big one for me. And, I've been seeing like healers and other coaches, because in my relationship, so that I can grow with my partner, I don't want these triggers to keep popping up. Our personalities aren't going away anytime soon. So if he goes and says something that pisses me off, I can go ahead and do the ARC process, but then I need to go and look at why this is pissing me off and how do I make sure it doesn't piss me off in the future.
Yeah. And if you can, and if you have this level of connection with your partner, is to enroll them in helping you with that. Right. So once everything's calmed down, to come back and say, listen, now that everything is good and we're in a good place, I'm realizing I got super triggered by that. And it's something that I want to work on. And I'd love your support in that if you see me getting triggered by this, or you hear me starting to go in this direction, that you gently say, sweetie, is this the thing you were talking about before that you felt was triggering you? Right? It has to be very gentle. You don't want it to be like, Lauren, you're doing that fucking thing again. Like that's not going to help. And you have to discuss, there has to be an agreement of how they bring it up to you. Like you can't just leave it up to them, because they'll say whatever they think is best, and that may not resonate with you. That may make the trigger worse. So if you can enroll them in the process, if you want, you don't have to, but this is a way where you working on your trigger can actually strengthen your relationship because they feel a part of you overcoming this challenge.
Yeah, and we keep saying triggers too. So I had a conversation with my boyfriend the other day, and he'd met somebody who they talked a little bit about triggers, and he's like, oh, do you have triggers in your relationship? And the guy was like, I don't get triggered. And my boyfriend's like, what? Explain this to me. He's like, well, it's actually that it's not that I don't get triggered per se. He's like, I just don't call it a trigger. What I call it is a growth opportunity. I'm like, oh, that's a really cool way of looking at it. I mean, it is when you look at it as a noun, like you get triggered, but it is definitely a growth opportunity too. Yeah. And I love the way that you talked about how to structure that in an actual conversation. We don't need to say, I mean, we could take your sweetie script. Yeah. I'll go ahead and put that in a transcript later for people.
That, but you do that over time, and as long as there's an agreement. This is something I talk about a lot too with self-leadership. Is prisoners do expectations, self-leaders do agreements, right? So when you're a prisoner in your relationship, in yourself, whatever stance you're taking as a prisoner, you expect people to do certain things. You expect yourself to do certain things, and expectations are never productive, because what happens? The person lives up to your expectation, and you go, what do you want, a cookie? That's what you were supposed to do. And if they don't live up to your expectation, then you're pissed. So best case scenario is meh. Like, who wants to live in a place where that's the best case scenario? So if there are agreements instead, agreements are like writing a song. It's like co-creating. It's like, here's what I would really love to have from you. Does that work for you? And you're totally open to say yes, no, or I need to renegotiate that. That doesn't work for me. Cool. Well, tell me what you would need. And really getting into that place where even then when you both say that, a lot of people will say, okay, cool, we have an agreement, and go their separate way. And instead, even slowing that down more and saying, okay, I really appreciate that you agreed to approach my triggering situation like this, but what would happen if you said that and then I blew up at you? Like, how would we handle that? Like, really digging in and making sure you're on the same page about things. And it seems like a lot of work, but doing that on the front end just makes everything so much more smooth going forward. And then you're managing the agreement. And this I'm talking about this in a personal relationship, but this is in work, in leadership, in professional relationships, family relationships. When you make an agreement with somebody where everybody's on board and there's nobody's trying to find a loophole, nobody's trying to find a way to make you, to throw you off your game. When you have an agreement and somebody doesn't live up to their part of the agreement, then you're managing the agreement. You don't go back and say, you didn't do what you were going to say. Instead, you go back and say, I thought we had a clear agreement, but it seems like this didn't work for you. And that's okay. Let's talk about what would work better for you going forward. What can I do to support you so that we can keep the agreement going forward? And that way, it's never about blaming the person. It's still about responsibility, but it's not about blame. And that can be so helpful in creating great agreements with people in your world.
Yeah, I'm so happy you mentioned that, because I had something recently where I had an agreement with somebody, and it was almost like they didn't really want to make the agreement in the first place, but they made it because, just we're all training ourselves to not be people pleasers. And at the time of the day of the agreement, I could kind of intuitively tell that they didn't want to do it, and they were putting it off. They were putting it off, and I was literally sitting there waiting for us to do this thing. And finally, I did get upset about it, and I'm like, hey, that's cool that you're putting this off a little bit. I think I did go ahead and say, are we going to reschedule this? But I was super pissed off when I said it. So just hearing you articulate and say it's actually okay if somebody wants to change that agreement.
Yeah.
And which here we did address the fact that they didn't want to make that agreement in the first place, and to just don't do that next time.
Right.
Be more open about how you're feeling so that we can make an agreement that fits for the both of us.
Yeah.
But it's a lot better just to say, things change, agreements change, people change. We don't need to take it personally when something needs to change. So go ahead and reschedule it or figure out what's going to work for the both of you.
Yeah, and that's I love that. I love that's beautiful. And the great thing is that if you are managing the agreement and then they don't do what they agreed to do, and you come back and say, okay, that agreement either wasn't clear enough or we didn't really truly both agree that this is something that needed to happen. So let's slow down and talk about what would work better. And then if it continues not working, then you have to make the choice of whether you want somebody in your life who doesn't really hold up to an agreement that you co-create together. And so you manage the agreement up to the point where you say, it's not worth it for me to continue working with somebody who obviously does not want to co-create something. And then you cut them out of your life if you so choose.
Boom. In the South, when we're done with someone, I don't live in the South anymore, but we would just go, bye.
Bye, Felicia.
Bye. Okay, so, I mean, shoot, it's already been about 50 minutes. So
Is it really? What the hell?
Yeah, I really appreciate, we got into a lot. We talked about the divine feminine man. I would actually love to talk way more about that at a later date.
Yeah.
We got into how to be less fucking frustrated in your relationships by just being more aware of the inner process and being a leader of that inner process, because that is the only thing that you can have control over.
And can I share one thing about that real quick?
Yes.
I hate to keep taking up time if we're trying to wrap up.
No, we can go for 2 more hours. It's fine.
Okay.
I'll make this
fantastic.
a 3-parter. I don't care.
I have no other life. This is all I'm doing. My house is being foreclosed on. My dog is dying. I can just hang out with you all day, and I'd love that. No, literally, I love that. You're fantastic. So the thing that directly with what you were saying, one of the most powerful things I've ever learned, and I learned it from Byron Katie, actually, when I was with her live in Ojai not too long ago. Just an amazing woman. And again, I know I've mentioned her like 3 times. Go check out the work. Go check out all of Byron Katie's stuff. It's changed my life. Yeah. I think it's thework.com. I'm not exactly sure. Yeah. But anyways, one of the things that she said when I was with her recently was when we were together was actually right when the Paris attacks had happened, the Paris terrorist attacks. And somebody asked her opinion on the terrorist attacks. And what she said really kind of polarized the room. Some people either left the room or told me afterwards they wanted to leave the room. But I took it as something that was so powerful. And it applies to everything we're talking about with having better relationships with your significant other or with anybody else in the world. And it's like, it has become my new go-to for everything I think of when I get upset or angry with somebody else. And it's this. She said, if somebody comes up to her and says, I'm going to kill you, then she says, they have to do it. And we said, what do you mean? She's okay with it. I said, what do you mean? She goes, because if I believed about me what they believed about me, I would kill me too. And so what she means by that is saying, instead of getting angry and getting hostile and being upset and questioning and having all these, hardcore emotions towards people, understand that they are behaving the way they're behaving because they believe what they believe. And if I believed what they believed, I would do the exact same thing.
Yeah. So
and I told this to a client. Yeah, I told this to a client recently. They're like, yeah, you're right. If I believed what she believed, I'd probably do the same thing too. I'm like, no, not probably. If you believed what she believed, you would do the exact same thing she did. And it's like, there's some sense of innocence there. Right? When we can make the other person innocent, it doesn't mean they're not responsible. There's a difference between them being responsible for something they did and them being innocent. They're innocent because they're just believing and acting from the thoughts and the stories that they believe. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that they don't have some kind of fault or some kind of responsibility. But if I can say, it's not about me and it's only about what they believe, and if I believed what they believe, I would do the same thing, it frees me. I don't have to free them. It frees me from having anger and hostility towards them. So I'm not exactly sure why that came up, but I felt compelled to share it. So I hope it was valuable.
I mean, I was talking about your internal process, right?
There you go. Yeah.
What happens for you internally and being responsible for that.
Yeah.
How did the room respond?
There was a lot of quiet. It was fresh. I mean, like literally, like there's a no phone zone basically. So somebody cheated. Somebody got on their phone at some point because they stood up and said, "Hey, okay, what do you think about the Paris attacks?" And I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about? What Paris attacks?" None of us were watching the news, and they said like literally just happened an hour before. And I guess she found out on a break that it had happened. And so yeah, a lot of people were just very quiet. But there was just something when she said that, like, if somebody says they're going to kill me, they have to do it because if I believed about me what they believed about me, I would do it too. So she was saying the terrorists in Paris, we're not saying they're right or wrong, but because they believe what they believe, that's why they did what they did. And that allows me to just be free from any question about the world doesn't work right and why is the universe mean and how could this happen to good people? It's not about any of that. It's about people living from their beliefs. And it's a great reminder for me to say, what am I believing in my life to be true that's causing me to act in certain ways?
That's powerful.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, she rocked my world.
I mean, even what you just said too, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, we went over the ARC model. That was wonderful.
Cool.
Where would we be able to find you online?
I'm not on the internet. The CIA, they're watching. The green light of my camera's on, Lauren. They know where we are.
That's me.
Send me underneath a bridge in Raleigh. I'll be serving. No, I'm just kidding. So you can find me online. I'm all over the place online.
Okay.
I hang a lot on Facebook. Facebook is like my go-to, and I've made it really easy for people to find me on Facebook. At some point, Facebook's going to shut me down for this, but for now it works. You literally can go to www.facebookjason.com, and it redirects you to my Facebook page.
Oh, that's cool.
By the time this airs, it will have been shut down.
I won't tell anyone though. It's fine.
Yeah. Don't nobody's watching this, right? It's not like anybody's going to know.
No.
That's how we'll know how popular your show is, right? If I get shut down right when this goes live, you're kicking ass. That's awesome. So facebookjason.com, and then the easiest way to find my website, it is meometry.com. That can be hard for people to spell sometimes. If you go to jasonthespeaker.com, because I'm a speaker and my name is Jason, if you go to jasonthespeaker.com, it'll take you to my main website as well. And I'd love to continue the conversation. If there's anything I can do to serve you, there's an ebook that you can get on my website that helps you figure out your core values and your why, and it's really fun and free, so you can grab that. And keep supporting Lauren, because the work you're doing with Omni Love is amazing, and you're just fantastic. Like, I'm so happy that we met in Costa Rica, and now you're in SD, and you're just rocking it, and I'm just so happy to be with you.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me. I'm going to put you on the spot to finish off.
Okay, do it.
If you were to talk to a woman, and if you were to talk to a divine feminine man, what is one thing that you might say to each of them?
Is the woman somebody who leads with femininity, who leads with masculinity? What do you like? What were you envisioning in your head?
Maybe a woman who has been leading with masculine, and it's showing up in the relationship in the way that we were talking about before, whereas the man is holding the feminine space for them.
You know, I would say to, I'd actually probably say the same thing to both people. I'd say be patient with the other person. Be patient, because the man who's trying to hold space with the divine feminine energy and may or may not be comfortable with it is doing the best he can.
He just wants to love you.
He just wants to love you. And the woman who's leading with masculine energy, she's just doing the best she can, and she just wants to love him. And they may have their own ways of showing love, but if we can both be patient and both be really open to the fact that they're acting the way they're acting because they believe what they believe, and we can love them no matter what. Merely love her. It's a Broadway show or something, but merely love her like that. The way to make a beautiful relationship is to merely love her, and same for the woman. Merely love him. There's nothing else to it. If you lead with love, and I don't care if it's masculine or feminine, you'll be okay.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so I will see you on part 2.
Cool. Let's do it.
And
you're from Raleigh, though. We're gonna do it in person.
I'm working towards that. Like, this is a $15 a month budget, this split screen stuff, but like I'm gonna get my own studio. I'm gonna get Oprah all up on my couch.
I believe it. I got connections to studios for you in San Diego now that you're there. So if you need a studio, holler at me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and we will see you again soon.
Lots of love.
Thank you.
Peace out.